Hey everybody, Evan and Irma here with Avira Health and a couple of amazing guests. We're going to be talking about the future of digital health today with industry insiders and tremendous expertise. Really excited for this chat. It took quite a while to bring us all together, but we are here. Irma, how are you?
Doing really well, Evan. Thank you, and welcome our guests.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's start with you, Cal, and Bright Insight. Maybe give us a snapshot of yourself and the genesis of Bright Insight.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Super excited to be here. Just a quick few seconds on myself. I'm a physician MBA that's worked in healthcare my whole career. Was on the management consulting side, then was on the pharma side, and then really moved into digital health over a decade ago. My focus has really been around, and really it's the company's focus is how do you leverage the power of data and digital to drive clinical outcomes, clinical improvements for patients, and do that at a global scale. And so, I think that's really the true power of digital health. I think we're still in the early days and excited to talk about it. In terms of Bright Insight, our focus is really to work with leading pharmaceutical companies and help them, again, leverage the power of digital to wrap around the great therapies they build to drive better real-world clinical results with those therapies, deliver better patient experience, and ultimately really a win-win for all parts of the healthcare ecosystem.
Well, that's phenomenal. I love the win-win proposition there. You don't see that much these days. Um, and our next guest, Irma, do you want to
Yes,
introduce Pravin?
Pravin, welcome. Please describe your role and with FTP Software Americas and a little bit about your background so we get to know you.
Thank you, Irma. Thank you for inviting me for this live stream. My name is Pravin Tiwari. I am the Executive Vice President and Business Head for FPT Software Americas. I bring in 3 decades of experience in managing region verticals across 3 continents. I worked with Africa, Europe, and Americas, delivering value to our stakeholders like customers, my employers, and employees. FPT America, just a quick background. We are the largest IT company from Vietnam with $1 billion revenue, 30,000 plus employees, serving 1,000 plus customers across 30 countries.
Wow, that's phenomenal. And you both have so much insight to share here. I can't wait to dive in. Well, let's start a little bit about the partnership between your 2 companies. Maybe Cal, how did that partnership start? What were the goals, and what's the joint mission there between the companies?
Yeah. So thanks for that question. So, and Praveen, chime in here and make sure that I remember my facts as well as you do. But
Yeah.
Praveen and I met probably about 6 or 7 years ago, and as we were really getting Bright Insight off the ground, before it was even called Bright Insight, actually, and our vision was really how do we build a compliant infrastructure, compliant from a privacy perspective, security perspective, but importantly also from a regulatory and quality perspective. So the way, for example, in the U.S., the FDA would regulate drugs, regulate devices. They also regulate, clinically oriented software. And so we were wanting to build this compliant infrastructure, and that was really the idea behind the company. And we wanted to do this at speed and at scale. And so we were really looking for a software partner to work with to do that. And I had the pleasure of meeting Praveen at a conference and introduced me to some of the capabilities that he just mentioned here. And we did a real deep dive on that. And specifically, what was really impressive to us was both the quality of the talent they had and the depth of that talent, but also their ability to be flexible to understanding the very specific and stringent requirements we were going to bring for regulated software, and to operate their teams against those requirements. And of course, to do all the follow-up in terms of not just the training, but also the documentation and the quality management. So it started at that level, and then they got involved in many customer projects as we started our early customer projects. And I think what's really been a nice part of the journey for us from the Bright Insight perspective has been our offering has really evolved from what I would say kind of building kind of custom solutions for pharma on top of our compliant platform to now we've really productized our offering. So it's much more out of the box, much faster to market for our customers, much more cost effective, et cetera, scalability. But the FPT team has really stayed with us through that, right? They have such an intimate understanding of our core platform. So they've been a common stay as our own software and product and solution has evolved. They've been great partners.
Yeah,
that's phenomenal.
Yeah, we started actually at one point of time, we were almost close to 100, 125 people working, building different solutions for BrightInsight for their customers. We continue to support their platform and evolve along with BrightInsight. Yeah, this journey started in June 2016.
Wow.
So there's quite some traction there.
Quite a few years back. So this is a great segue. Cal, I'd like to do a little bit more of a deep dive into some key digital health solutions that BrightInsight has developed. And I'd be particularly interested in you sharing some examples of it actually benefiting a patient experience, the patient outcomes, or efficiencies in the healthcare system.
Yeah, happy to do that. So our customers, as I mentioned, are primarily top 20 global pharmaceutical companies. Some of our public examples are companies like Roche, Sanofi, CSL Behring. And for them, we actually work in a variety of use cases. So again, we have this very extensible, flexible solution. So we're working on solutions from ultra rare diseases and rare diseases, and I'll give some examples, all the way through to diseases that are very common and mainstream. And we do that across many different markets. We have solutions deployed US, Europe, Japan, South America, et cetera. So many different markets for our customers as well. And to give you a couple examples to make that real, I'll start with maybe on the rare disease side. We work with, as I mentioned, CSL. They have a flagship therapy called Hizentra, and that's for patients that one of the main indications is for patients that have what's called primary immunodeficiency. So they have often a genetic driven gap in their immune system, and it gets replaced with this therapy. And just I'm overly simplifying it, of course, but one of the many challenges that patients have here is when they go from getting that therapy in the physician's clinic to now wanting to get that therapy at home. That's a great benefit to get to from a convenience perspective. But in the home now, they have to take on responsibilities that they were probably not thinking about or had to do before. One example, just once, I don't want to say small as in minimal, but one important example of that is that they have to do what we would call basically infusion site rotation. So, you're infusing yourself the therapy. You can't go to the same spot over and over, the same few spots over and over, because over time you're damaging your tissue. The therapy doesn't work as well. It could take longer. It could be painful, et cetera, right? But it's also, very hard to remember, what did I do a week ago or 10 days ago? And, especially when you're doing this over a lifetime. And so what our app, the app that we've built, with the brand team and the Hizentra, the CSL digital team, what that does is it has a very convenient way for a patient to see where, what their prior history was in terms of their injection sites, and how to really think about, the next injection site. So just again, a small example. It has other things like just also reminders, right? Because everyone's on their own personal dosing schedule. So how do I remember when my next infusion is coming up? Also has the ability for me to record anything I want, so that I have that information on maybe how I'm feeling or questions I have, et cetera, so that they are easily accessible for my next doctor's visit. Because I think regardless, I think all of us could probably relate, regardless of condition, or even if we don't have an active condition we're managing, like, oh, next time I go to the doctor, I want to remember to ask X. Or if I do have a condition, how has my pain been? How have I felt? How is my sleep quality, or whatever it might be? People it's hard to remember that when you're going to your doctor every 3 or 6 months, right? And so this app really makes it very convenient for them to do that, and again, in a very compliant way that meets all the regulatory requirements, as I said, privacy, et cetera. And we have this, I don't actually even know how many countries it's deployed in right now, but we started with the US, and based on that success have taken it to many of the key markets for CSL. So that's kind of an example on one end of the spectrum. I'll give you another very different example. And again, this is served by the same underlying technology. that BrightInsight provides with our partners at FPT. That's a technology let me give the example in ophthalmology. I think it's a pretty interesting one. So, there's an illness called macular degeneration. It's typically elderly folks as they become older, and also often can be secondary to having cardiometabolic disease, so diabetes and other diseases related to that. And so, what macular degeneration is ultimately it can result in blindness. And one of our clients has, again, really groundbreaking therapies that an ophthalmologist would inject into the eyes of the patient. So the therapies work really well, but everybody's going to have their own personal journey with the disease and their own personal journey with how they respond to therapy. So it's not something you get once and you're cured. You're going in on a regular basis to get evaluated. And then some of those times you may need additional therapy. So if you step back and you say, gosh, you have this amazing innovation, but what are some of the practical challenges? Well, the practical challenges for the patient is, hey, I'm getting treated, which is great, but now I have to make ophthalmologist appointments on a regular basis to go and get checked. And some of those times I may get additional therapy. So of course, now I'm having to take on that burden of time, of coordination. Maybe a loved one has to take me to an ophthalmologist, et cetera. So it's a real commitment. And many of those times, hopefully, I actually don't need additional treatment. I get it's kind of like a good wellness visit for my eyes, and everything's good, and I come back for the next visit. For the ophthalmologist, similarly, there's such a global shortage of ophthalmologists, I think pretty much in every country I've looked at. And so how do you get them to use their precious time for the patients that really need them at that point in time versus patients that maybe are actually doing just fine and ultimately didn't need any further evaluation or treatment. So what we built for our client, was they had this algorithm that they had acquired. Basically, it's an at-home vision test. And we instantiated that into an app on a patient's phone. So now when the patient gets the treatment, their ophthalmologist can also put them on this basically at-home vision test that's easily administered through their phone. And so now a patient and the ophthalmologist can see how the patient's vision is going over time and compare them to that specific patient's specific baseline of vision. And then if they're stable, then great. They can say, you don't need that next appointment next week. We'll just keep monitoring you and you stay at home and you're good. And you don't have to go through those inconveniences. You also have the peace of mind that your vision is doing well. Because maybe what if it started deteriorating a week after an appointment and your next one's not for 2 or 3 months, right? So it gives you that peace of mind and gives you that convenience. And for the physician, same thing. It says, hey, I know exactly how each one of my patients is doing. And if I call them into the clinic, I'm doing it for a reason. So if it's at 1 out of 10, I don't have to see 10 patients to find the one that needed more assessment or treatment. I only have to see the patient that I have good reason to believe needs a more detailed in-person assessment by me, and then potentially, retreatment or another treatment, right? So it really takes, on the one hand, the magic of this innovation that pharmaceutical companies are creating, but I think it just amplifies the real world experience, the real world impact, and frankly, in a healthcare system all over the world where it's resource constrained and cost constrained, can bring a lot of efficiency and effectiveness to the spend that we have. So anyway, just a couple examples. One much more really primarily focused on the patient. The other one that really is an enabler of that whole patient, physician, and health system to be more efficient and effective and have a better experience for all. So those are examples. Obviously, we can give other ones, but hopefully that helps make it real for you guys.
It's very impactful.
Absolutely, Cal. These are great examples, and I think you were using words like small. When you were talking about the infusions at home, and from a patient perspective, from a patient advocate perspective, there's nothing small about that. Any improvement in patient experience and allowing people to get effective treatment at home at the right dosage, at the right time, in the right place of insertion, it makes a huge difference in patients' lives and those that care for them. So thank you for those examples, and thank you for that work.
Yeah, it's amazing work. And Irma, as a former software engineer, appreciates the challenge of developing that piece of software, that architecture. That's no small task. So, Praveen, I'm curious, as a software powerhouse like FPT, I mean, what were some of the challenges and roadblocks that you had to overcome in crafting this kind of solution?
So, couple of things. One is most of the solutions was designed by BrightInsight team, but the challenges as a service provider that we faced was more to really adapt to the technologies, because it was a great idea, future of the healthcare backbone, and they went with the Google Cloud. And Google Cloud was a new technology in 2016-17, and not many people, not many skills was available. Thanks to FPT training team and backed by our FPT University learning courses, we were able to scale the team very quickly. So getting the right team, the cutting edge technology, resources was a big challenge, and that we were able to ramp up very quickly. And I think at that time, we BrightInsight also evaluated a couple of other vendors, and I think we came up much faster and better compared to others to become the primary vendor. So that was the main technological challenges that we see. Other than that, mostly the time lag, because Vietnam is 14 hours ahead of California. So time difference was one of the challenge which we overcome by bringing some of the folks on site. But eventually, we got to learn and found a way to, get the overlap and work with the BrightInsight team, and they learn how to work with the FPT team. So those were the two main challenges that we came across, and we were able to quickly adapt and then implement.
Phenomenal. Well done.
And now back to Cal. I'd love to hear some more examples or your thoughts on what do you see as the next big development in digital health for the biopharma sector. I know you have the background in that, and you've kind of given us some examples, but what's next in that area?
Yeah, having come from pharma, I was at Novartis and Amgen, earlier, before moving to directly into digital health entrepreneurship. The good news is, these companies, all the pharma companies, have an immense amount of talent, and like ourselves, people who are incredibly motivated to drive impact, and they're passionate about that. And because they come from a background of really being, again, passionate and solutions oriented, it's a very much a learning mindset, right? And so how do we adopt innovation to do things better? And I think we're actually really, I wouldn't even say we're in the early days, where I think the journey will never end now on the impact that digital can have on the healthcare industry overall, and within pharma as well. So, I'm not an expert in all of these areas, but just to give a flavor, we're seeing a ton of stuff in the research and development areas right now, particularly with leveraging Gen AI capabilities, right? Because often, finding the next great therapy has been described as a needle in a haystack. And so how can you leverage the power of Gen AI to potentially synthesize and bring together such a massive amount of data from very different places, and generate that point of view on what potential target to go after, or better elucidating how a particular pathway works and how it might go awry and need addressing. So it just, from both the brainstorming perspective to then also what kind of actual drug would you formulate or construct that can then do something and try to get things back in track. There's just tons of stuff happening on the R&D side, and I think hopefully what that'll do is that'll lead to not just more innovation, but faster innovation and more cost effectively. Because again, a typical pharmaceutical drug costs a couple $1 billion and takes over 10 years, to come through that process and get in the hands of the patients that need it. So that's just one area. Another, I think, key area from a digital perspective is, now when you have something that you think it works, you have to go through incredibly rigorous clinical trials, right? And of course, that is crucial to showing both not just the efficacy and who it's going to be efficacious for, but also from a safety perspective, right? And that's where, for example, using the U.S. example, the FDA really comes in. What's really sad is that the majority of clinical trials don't actually fully enroll, because there's really a challenge to finding enough patients right? And so either they take a lot longer than they should, or they never really get to the full enrollment that they want. And so again, what does that mean? That means that you're now again delaying. You're delaying ultimately getting the answer on whether something works or not, which means you're delaying getting it in the hands of the patients that really need it, or even if it doesn't work, getting that learning so that why it didn't work, and that can be fed back into the R&D process. Okay, well, why did this fail? What could we do differently? Et cetera, right? And so I see a power of digital really being able to at the end of the day look at global scale for where are these patients, right? Because if you think about it, anybody with an illness, in theory, could be a patient for the next generation therapy coming out in their disease area, right? But today, it's really skewed towards where are the large academic medical centers where these trials take place. Do you happen to live near there? Do you happen to have some connection to that? If you take the train in Chicago, you'll still see clinical trials advertised, on the platform or the train or within the train, right? And of course, a lot of that is moved to digital from a marketing perspective, but it hasn't sufficiently, or I think there's a lot of power to leverage digital to really go into the data itself, like claims data, EMR data, et cetera, and find those patients and say, hey, this patient, you might actually be a great fit for this trial that just started enrolling over here. And what I've learned in my own experience, both individually and at BrightInsight, is that most people, they want to help others who also have their disease. So if somebody knows that, hey, by me enrolling in this trial, I may benefit, but also I may end up, contributing to science moving forward, and my peers or the next generation of folks that come along and have the same disease might benefit from this therapy, I want to be a part of that. And we overwhelmingly see that data right now. Obviously needs to be delivered in a way that's fully compliant in terms of how my data was leveraged to even match me to that trial. And then of course, from there on forward. So that's just another example, like how do you find patients to really help tackle that bottleneck of clinical trial enrollment. You can easily extend that to how do you improve the experience. So even if I'm in a clinical trial, I don't want to have to drive every week to the trial site. Can I be at home getting monitored, whether through wearables, whether through, data I'm giving in apps, video visits, et cetera, right? It's a huge opportunity for digital to do that. And then, where BrightInsight's more focused, we're primarily on drugs that are already, in market or coming to market. And here, again, I think we're just scratching the surface. For most drugs, they have a challenge between, so if you take a typical specialty drug in the United States, only about half of the prescriptions that get written ever get to the patient actually even taking their first dose of that drug. If you think about that, like, so you're walking away from that, you just had a visit with your doctor and you got a prescription for a specialty drug. That means your condition warranted a conversation. You had a discussion, you made a plan with your doctor. You guys presumably agreed to that plan, and now you're going to implementation of that plan. And it's so sad that half of those patients never even get to that first prescription. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that. Some of them are oriented around affordability, but I'll say a lot of affordability solutions don't even get fully utilized, like copay cards as an example. There's a lot of other services that are provided by patients, by payers, et cetera, that don't get fully leveraged by specialty pharma, that don't get fully leveraged by patients to do things like help them, for example, learn how to inject themselves if that's required, otherwise manage a dosing regimen that maybe is very personalized and complex, managed through side effects. So it's just a real shame that, even just that conversion point, half the therapy, patients never get onto the therapy that they and their doctors believe is the right thing for them. And then once you're on therapy, there's a huge amount of drop off, often for conditions that are lifelong conditions, and why that happens. Well, again, some of the reasons I just got back from Chicago late last night. I just missed 2 days of my medicine. Why? Because I was rushing to the plane, forgot to grab my, I thought I had extra in my backpack, got into Chicago, realized I didn't have it. I messaged my wife last night and said, hey, can you leave it? I didn't want to bother her when I get home at 1 a.m. So I said, can you just leave it outside our door? I'll sleep in the office. And she left the wrong bottle. Not her fault. But so now I've gone 2 days without getting my medicine, right? So there's just, here I am, a physician. I work in healthcare my whole life. Life gets in the way of all of our best intentions, right? And so how do you use the power of digital, right, to wrap around now, keeping people not, on therapy, keeping them adherent? Because again, none of these things work if you don't take them, right? And they work even better if you take them how you're supposed to, right? And so again, I think we're just in the early days of how pharma companies can really take their therapies and wrap these digital services around them in a way that takes everyone's best intentions and makes them real. And to the earlier point, Evan, around win-win, I think then that becomes actually like the win-win-win-win-win. And what I mean by that is you as a patient win because you're getting hopefully the right therapy and you're taking it the right way and you're seeing the clinical results, right? The physician wins because why do people become doctors? Because they want to help people. And there's nothing more frustrating than having somebody come back to your office and they're not getting better, right? And so now if they're taking the medication as intended, much more likely to come in having gotten better. And if they didn't, now you at least know what's working, what's not working, and how to make that better. Look, frankly, the payer wins, right? Whoever's paying the bill, because the last thing anybody wants to do, whether it's the government or the insurance company or employers, to pay for therapies that don't work, right? And or you're not taking. So you win, right? And then of course the healthcare system wins also because now you don't end up having to need more healthcare because your condition worsens. You end up in the ER. You end up in needing additional interventions, et cetera. And of course the pharmaceutical company wins, right? Because their solutions are performing better in the real world. All the stakeholders see more value, and of course that's going to translate to their sales and bottom line as well.
Okay, that's a lot there. So you covered concept of distributed clinical trials, and then this medication adherence. Thank you for giving us actual examples of what it means when there is non-adherence to medication, because those sounds like fancy words, but it really impacts kind of every part of the ecosystem here. Evan?
Yeah, well, let's shift gears a little bit to a hot topic. I'm interested in data security, data protection, data privacy. We see in the media every day just horrific stories about everything from breaches to misuse of data. And Praveen, as a key software services provider, you understand the criticality of this area. How did you come together with BrightInsights to make sure you were adherent and were putting forward solutions which didn't get you in the newspaper when it comes to data protection, customer privacy, et cetera?
So architecture was all planned by BrightInsight. So BrightInsight had the right team, the chief security officer, and all the kind of technology architecture that they built. We ensured that we follow the guidelines that we had put. So the robot process that they had put in place needs to be followed by the development team, the testing team, and the execution or support team. And that we ensured that we continue to do the regular audits and ensuring that everybody follows the guideline. But primarily, BrightInsight actually had the whole architecture, putting the right tools in place, building the right technology. So they architected and we built it for them.
Yeah, well, it's no small feat of engineering. And, Cal, it must be very sad for you when you read about your patients, having all their information just put on the dark web or worse. I know that's an ongoing concern. Do you have a particular philosophy there when it comes to privacy?
Yeah, look, so foundationally, as we said before, ever a line of code was written, we put in place our quality management system and our privacy and security, architecture, right? So we started with that as the fundamental principles of the company's, not just the software stack, but all of our, SOPs, right? And so, that gets validated to an extent through all of our external certifications. Our certifications, as Praveen said, extend through to our partners like FPT, right? And so it's really having that kind of end-to-end view and end-to-end integration. I think the second part is it really maps back to what is the company prioritizing and what's the culture and expectations around it, right? Because there's always going to be competing priorities. And so the question becomes, when any employee, when any partner is faced with a deadline, is faced with, how many things they need to get done under pressure, like we all do in our jobs, what are the principles and values that they're going to prioritize and index around, right? And ensuring that they're not taking shortcuts. So we try to institute all of that through the whole company and our partners. Now with that said, like we all know, you try to do all of the right things, but there's no, this is a dynamic space. It's never going to be 100%. But what you want to know is you're doing all of the right things, and then secondly, you want to know if something goes awry, do you have the systems, the processes, the people, et cetera, to both discover that as quickly as possible, and then to take the right actions as fast as possible, right? And so try to take that holistic view towards it. But it's it's foundational to our industry. For us, it's foundational because, again, we're supporting, typically our customer base is, again, top 20 pharma companies. We're working on their flagship drugs that are multi-billion-dollar drugs, in their key markets. And so, our customers are, have that, not just have that expectation of us, but they're also auditing us, right? So we go through regular audits, not by just third parties, but also, also our customer base. And we try to have a very continuous learning mindset about it, right? It's not like, oh, we did it, we're done. It's like everything's evolving, right? Technology is evolving, the security tools we're using are evolving, the threats are evolving. Frankly, the requirements obviously evolve, right? When you go from one country to another country, it's not that, our privacy laws in the US or GDPR in Europe or, in India, et cetera, are static. They're also, evolving. So it's very much a, just something you have to prioritize, to have the right, people and the right processes and ecosystem, internal and external ecosystem, and then continuously be monitoring and testing and improving upon.
And even FPT also got our centers HIPAA certified, high trust compliant, like HIPAA compliant, high trust certified, and we work with a very regulated industry like aviation and healthcare. So we have to ensure that all the right security measures are in place, because any information leak could be a disaster. And so we followed all the right processes that is needed to ensure the compliance.
So important. Staying with the theme of collaboration, I want to just take a step back and kind of, Pravin or Carl or both, if you can talk about how does the collaboration between BrightInsight as a tech services provider, with the tech services provider like FPT Software, how does that collaboration drive innovation in the field?
So multiple things. I think when I met Cal in the conference when he presented this DigitalHealth platform, which was very, very futuristic, very leading solution. The challenge was always when it comes with the new technology, a new solution, is the cutting edge technology. Now, in order to scale the resources to implement or execute that concept is the biggest challenge, and that's where a service provider like us can come and quickly scale in those cutting edge technology areas to ensure that we bring those concept to reality and implement those solutions. So that's one. The other thing, what we are seeing in the market is the evolution of engagement model. So earlier it was purely partnership model, where there is a customer and the vendor doing the development. But as the things are evolving, I think there is a fire alarm in the back. Sorry. So as the things are evolving, the partnership model has changed. People looking now, the new models are evolving, like joint venture, investment, IP, joint IP ownership kind of thing.
Well, hopefully there's not an actual fire. Otherwise, I'd encourage you to get up and run from the room.
No. I've been here. That's why I went on a mute a little bit, so that
okay. It's always something with live streaming, so you never know what excitement you might find. But what about you, Cal? From your perspective, do you have some lessons for your peers, maybe physician entrepreneurs, startup companies, organizations looking to get into this space? You've seen the challenges and the opportunities. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so a lot of different ways we can go with that question. So maybe I'll try to hone in on a couple of places. So look, one is from the notion of you got to know what your North Star is, right? So in our case, as I mentioned, like really leveraging the power of digital to transform patient outcomes at global scale. That's a big, bold statement, but that directs all of the things that we're doing in the company. It directs how we think about the specific problems we want to solve, how we're doing our R&D spend, how everyone should be spending all of their time in terms of which projects et cetera, right? So I think having that true north is important, and then you want to of course, be validating that. Has anything changed in the world that, or have you learned anything that makes you need to adjust that? But then within there, you got to break that down into incremental milestones, incremental progress, and incremental proof points, right? And so you can't just kind of bite off, everything at once. And so, how do you know you're continuously making progress, continuously learning, and having the ability to pull up and acknowledge that? Because the work is extremely hard and taxing, and changing things is probably the hardest thing to do in any industry, but particularly in healthcare. And so you got to be able to look up once in a while and say, oh, look, we did make, even though it feels like we've been slogging through this, we're making actual progress, right? And relying on that progress to keep the motivation going. I think from a different bend, if we think about I guess now close to 7 years since Praveen and I, as Praveen said, we first met, like, the technology world has changed a lot, right? And obviously everyone's talking nonstop about AI, Gen AI right now. And I think I'll offer two lenses on that. One is, you gotta keep up with that, but also, again, rely on trusted partners to bring their experience to you, right? And so in our case, right, so we would have an expectation that a company like FPT that's working across so many industries, and whatever you said, for 1,000 companies, not all 1,000 of them are all in on AI, but many of your customers are, and so what are you learning from that? And how do you bring those insights to us, is an expectation we would have of a strategic partner like FPT. And then similarly, I would say, like, we have the same thing like with Google Cloud, that Praveen mentioned earlier. Our team spent a lot of time with the Google Cloud team, deep in on the R&D side of things, to really understand where that technology is at, what's ready for prime time for us to bring into our solution. Obviously, we hold that high bar from the data privacy, security, regulatory quality perspective, and so, within our domain, the bar goes even higher, but we're making a ton of progress. And in fact, our CTO is going to be at a conference in a couple of weeks, speaking with the GCP team on some of the innovation we're doing with them. So point being that, it doesn't all come internal. You got to, work with key partners that have that more expansive view, or building some of that core technology. And then I think the third piece, I'll say on that kind of on all innovation, but particularly on what we think could be really disruptive innovation like AI, you have to have, I think, both a top-down and a bottoms-up approach. And what I mean by that is, from a top-down perspective, like, we've published externally, but importantly internally, our principles on how we're thinking about and approaching and leveraging Gen AI, right? Because we have to think about not just the value part, but the risk part of things. But also, what that does is that for us, it guides us on where we want to prioritize. So, for example, we're really focused right now on what can we do in terms of improving internal efficiencies and quality of what we do, and streamlining that, et cetera, as like the primary areas where we expect to both get the experience and the learning, but also the value. What's coming then is, how do we put this in the hands of patients? And even there, we have a lens that says, okay, well, first, let's start with taking on the experience side, where we're not necessarily taking on anything clinical. So we may, for example, take a patient's recorded notes and help them synthesize them, and let the patient review them and validate that that was a good synthesis for them, that they can send to their physician, as an example, instead of just having raw notes that the patient or the physician needs to do this. So that's or how do we leverage it to make it much easier for a patient to record some of the things they might want to put into their notes. So how do we use AI for that? Versus, let's say, very futuristic would be, can the AI help make a clinical recommendation, as an example, right? And so we want to start with, how do we go into that quadrant of improve experience, but not take on any clinical risk until this technology matures, et cetera, at the right time, kind of push more and more into some of these more clinically oriented use cases, right? And our pharma customers expect that, right? They're all, we demo it, they're all curious and excited about what we can do on a clinical perspective, but no one's ready to jump in on that just yet. But it's great to see where that's going.
Yeah, and that's where the collaboration with the companies like FPT, because we keep doing a lot of R&Ds, keep our talent pool, upskill through various training program that we do, so that we can actually bring in those kind of scalability for the customers like BrightInsight. So there are a lot of good ideas, and how do you do a POC? How do you implement some of the ideas to prove certain points? So that collaboration helps through bringing those kind of talents in place.
Yeah, well, that's great. Thank you both for mentioning patients again and how patients benefit, and also giving us a view into the industry trends and what we might expect as kind of the next frontier of innovation in general in the healthcare space, in digital health. So starting to kind of wrap up some of the closing thoughts, I would love to hear what are your main goals for the continuous innovation and collaboration between BrightInsight and FPT Software? So what do you see as a partnership moving forward? And what are your plans to achieve those goals, which are probably lofty?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. Probably you can chime in. So, look, for us, as a company, our focus is to take some of the kind of examples I was talking about at the beginning and others, and really ensure we're helping our customers drive those at scale across multiple markets, and really generate the clinical and the business proof points around this kind of innovation, because ultimately, we can all talk about the theory of what these things can do, but we want to show the hard evidence, right? The hard scientific evidence, the hard business evidence around the value and impact. So we're very focused on that as a company. Secondly, this is where certainly our own engineering and FPT's teams come in, is continuing to invest in the product R&D. So a few years ago, again, it might have taken multiple millions of dollars in multiple years to bring one of these solutions for a customer to market. Now we can do it in less than 2 quarters, and in a much more cost-effective way. So how do we continue to make our product features and functionalities more robust, and so that you get much more out of the box, and you have even a more compelling solution that you can put in the hands of patients and caregivers and healthcare providers.
And from the FPT perspective, we want to see BrightInsight grow, and we continue to help them innovate and develop new solutions and support all through the journey. We are very, very happy to have BrightInsight as a customer, very, very important customers, and want to see this growing bigger and bigger.
Yeah, we've created quite a virtuous circle here that's really helping transform the healthcare system and patients' lives and on and on. And it's so great to see a partnership that's winning and projects that are successful. A lot of challenges out there, as you both know, and congratulations on all the success, onwards and upwards. And thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's a lot of fun.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Take care.